Hello, this is Pastor James Wilkerson coming to you, having this new segment called Real Talk for Victorious Living. And I just want to take some moments to just look into the Word of God and just see what the Lord will say to us about living victorious, how to live a lifestyle that's approved by God, that pleases God, and have victory on earth as well as in heaven. I was reading an article. And the article was talking about a country music star who was apologizing for some racial slurs and words that he used. And I looked at that and the Spirit immediately hit me with, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You know, a lot of times when people who are famous in this world, they say stuff and then immediately they want to apologize. But it's almost like it's an empty apology, because had they never, ever got caught, would they change what they said? Would they apologize for what they said? So I want to read some scriptures and have a conversation about victorious living, and how we have to watch what we say and what we do as Christians. So I'm going to start by reading to you Proverbs 4, verses 20 through 24. Proverbs 4. And it says, "My son, give attention to my words. Incline your ear to my saying. Do not let them depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart. For they are life to those who find them and health to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. Put away from you a deceitful mouth, and put perverse lips far from you." Now I want to read that same thing, those same scriptures, from the Passion translation of the Bible. And in the Passion translation, it says, "Listen carefully, my dear child, to everything that I teach you, and pay attention to all that I say. Fill your thoughts with words until they penetrate deep into your spirit. Then, as you unwrap my words, they will impart true life and radiant health into the very core of your being." But look at verse 23. He says, "So above all, guard your affections of your heart, for they affect all that you are. Pay attention to the welfare of your innermost being, for from there flows the wellspring of life." Now here it is, we see Solomon speaking to his son, his children, and he's telling them to guard their heart, to guard the affections of your heart, the emotions of your heart, to guard what goes into your heart, because what goes into your heart will affect all that you are. See, it's no accident that something just happened. Oh, I just slipped and said this. No, there's no slip of the tongue. There's no slip of the tongue, because what's in the tongue comes out of our mouth. It comes out of our hearts. I just want to stand up for a minute. It comes out of who we are. So at the core of our being is who we are. And what we say comes from what's in us. What we do comes from what's in us. And we see Solomon here. He tells his children in verse 23, he says it. He says, "So above all, guard the affections of your heart, for they affect all that you are." Everything about you is affected by what's in your heart. Not this beating heart, but what's in your spirit. Media shapes our spirit. What we was brought up with shapes our spirit. How our parents raised us and treated us, how we're being treated today, it affects our spirit. It affects everything about who we are and what we do. So it's important that we have to watch and guard our hearts. We have to watch who we are, what goes in us. It's not by accident that somebody stepped on your shoe and you just felt like fight. You just punched them for no reason. Or you punched them because they stepped on your shoe. See, that's been in your heart. That's nothing new. So it's important for us to guard our hearts, because out of it flows the issues of life. And I want to look at this from another standpoint. I want to look at this from what Jesus said in Luke, the 6th chapter. Let's go there. Let's turn to Luke, to the book of Luke, the 6th chapter, and let's go down to verse number 43. And I'm just trying to get it set up on my tablet so that I can begin reading it from the King James Version of the Bible, so that I can share this with you from both ways. And this is after Jesus is talking about judging people, how you don't judge people because you'll be judged also. But he tells them that before you judge your brother, before you tell your brother to let you pull the mote out of his eye, pull the plank out of your own eye first. Before you try to sweep around my front door, sweep around your own front door. Before you try to tell me about, how I'm living, make sure your living is right as well. But let's go down here to verse number 43 in Matthew, the 6th chapter. And it reads like this. It says, "For a good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they gather grapes from a bramble bush. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good fruit, brings forth good. And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." Now we see this right here. We see just what Jesus is teaching. He's teaching us the difference between good and bad. He's teaching us the difference between good doesn't come out of a bad heart and bad doesn't come out of a good tree. That's what it was. But listen to what it says here. And I'm going to read this from the Passion Translation again in Luke 43 through 45. It says, "You will never find choice fruit hanging on a bad, unhealthy tree. And rotten fruit doesn't hang on a good, healthy tree. Every tree will be revealed by the quality of fruit that it produces. Figs or grapes will never be picked off thorn trees. People are known in the same way. Out of the virtue stored in their hearts, good and upright people will produce good fruit. But out of the evil hidden in their hearts, evil ones will produce what is evil. For the overflow of what has been stored in your heart will be seen by your fruit and will be heard in your words." Now look at what Jesus said. Jesus said, first of all, bad, unhealthy trees does not produce good fruit. We know if we get an unhealthy tree, we want to cut it down because it's no good. And you don't get bad, unhealthy fruit or you don't get good fruit from a bad, unhealthy tree. You don't get that. So what is he saying? Good does not come out of a person who has a bad, unhealthy, negative spirit. And bad doesn't come out of anybody who has a good, healthy, positive spirit. Why? Because of the fact is that if you are a person who pours in good stuff into your heart, you pour in good into your spirit, into your mind, then you want to do what's right. You want to love people regardless of how they look. You love. You treat people right because it's the right thing. It's the righteous thing to do. But if you got something just rotten to the core in you, you're going to treat people wrong because your spirit is unhealthy. Your spirit is bad. It's evil. It's wicked. And so that's why what comes out of your character, your conduct, and conversation is nothing but negative, bad, unhealthy stuff. That's the bottom line. And as a child of God, if you're a child of God, you want to produce good fruit. You know, there's an old saying, you can tell a tree by its fruit. Well, that's what Jesus is saying here. This is where that saying came from. Because you cannot produce good out of bad, unhealthy stuff. Very few things that I know of, if any, come from a bad, unhealthy relationship. But why is that relationship bad and unhealthy? Because that's what's in the person, in one of the people that's in that relationship. You know, treating people wrong, you know, you calling people names, you trying to oppress people and push people down. That's because of the spirit that's on the inside of you, because that's what is in your heart. And look at what it says. I love the first part of the last sentence in verse 45 from this Passion Translation. It says, for the overflow of what has been stored in your heart. Now look at how the Passion Translation put this. In the King James, that first part says, for out of the abundance of the heart. You see that? The abundance means more than enough. The Passion Translation just kind of breaks it down a little more to let us know that for out of the overflow of what has been stored in your heart. So see, if a person says something, that's what's been stored in them. You know, it's like they say, you know, like when a person gets drunk, I've never been there, so I don't understand. I don't even like, you know, liquor and all that stuff. You know, I have some wine, but that hard liquor, I can't, never did like it. Don't like beer. But for a person who indulges in that, their character and conversation, their conduct will be reflected when they get drunk. They'll say words, what they really want to say, it's going to come out. If a person wants to be sexual with many partners, they get drunk, they'll do that. They won't even care. So this is what the Bible is saying, is that out of the abundance, out of the overflow, what's stored up in your heart, what's in your spirit, what's in your soul, what's in your mind, what's in your intellect, in your imagination, those things will come out. That's why it's so important that you make sure you're putting the good stuff, such as the word of God, in your spirit. And let me tell you, I'm not going to say people can't change, because people can change. The fruit on the tree of a negative tree can't change, but in our spirits can be reprogrammed through the word of God so that we produce good fruit. So we have to always make sure that we are guarding our hearts. We're keeping our hearts with all diligence so that the issues of life, when trials and tribulations come, we're able to stand strong because the word of God is in us. When we're tested, when we're tried, when we put through fire, that we pass the test, because in our heart, we program our hearts with the word. So we always have to make sure that the overflow of what's stored in our heart is the word of God. So that our conduct, our character, our conversation will be reflected in our attitude in pleasing God and doing what's right by God. Because let me tell you something. If you seek to please God, you'll treat people right. See, you can't be hateful and racist and bigot and all this stuff. You can't be when what? When the word of God is what's in your heart. Because why? You're going to be after the Beatitudes. You're going to love. You're going to be blessed. You're going to be able to love your enemy. You're going to be able to love your wife as Christ loved the church. You're going to be able to submit unto your husband. You're going to raise your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. You're going to treat your brothers and sisters good and kind. You will give and lend. You'll support the ministry. When why? When you have the right things in your heart. So I want us to be victorious. I want us to live victoriously through this word of God, but we just got to be real. Don't offer up apologies that you don't mean. Don't ask for forgiveness that you really don't care about. And make sure, like I said, you put the word in your heart and let that word prevail. Let God do what God do. Let this word penetrate into your soul so you'll have health and healing to all parts of your life, your bones and everything, till it penetrates deep in your soul. So, hey, I want to thank you. I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, and share this video. This is Real Talk for Victorious Living with Pastor James Wilkerson. And my first segment is out of the abundance of the heart. That's what this is, out of the abundance of the heart. So have a good day. God bless you, and I love you. See you again next week. Peace.